When I was a sophomore in high school, I took a chemistry class that was super, super hard. Joel was in there with me. And it was just really hard for me to understand. I tried and I tried and I tried. And I did okay, but a lot of times I was just making it up. Well, one of the rules that our teacher had, her name was Mrs. Richardson, for getting us to participate more, was that if we raised our hands, we would get credit towards our participation grade, whether we got the answer right or not. So at some point I was like, wait a second, it doesn't matter if the answer is right or not. I could just raise my hand every time, because not everybody raised their hand every time. So literally every time she asked a question, I would raise my hand and I would give whatever I thought the answer was. And I was wrong a lot, but I didn't care because I knew my grade was going up. So over the course of that quarter, my grade went up and up and up to the point where in my participation, I got 120%. And because the tests were hard for me and the homework was hard for me, that 120% on the participation raised my grade. So I could get like an 80% on the tests, but the 120% on the participation would average it out to an A plus at 100%. So she actually, after I started doing this, realized that other kids started catching on, and so they started raising their hand all the time. Joel also, and so his grades started going up, 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 and she started giving out these participation grades that were so high, and she said, you know what, I might need to change this. So she changed the rule that you could not get above 100% in participation anymore. So being the student that I was at that time, I would raise my hand over and over and over again until I got up to 100%, and then I stopped. Later in the year, towards the end of the year, we ended it with something called an experiment of unknowns, where she basically gave us a whole bunch of different chemicals, and there was a series of tests we could do to see what the chemicals might be, and then we could guess. And if we guessed, we got points that raised our grade. And if we guessed wrong, there's a small penalty, but guessing right was worth a lot more. So we were doing this series of unknowns experiments. Me and Joel were lab partners, and while we were doing it, all of a sudden I realized that there was a particular test that had to do with, like, you would mix two liquids together, and if a ring formed, then it would narrow it down to like 3 or 4 different things, and then you could just guess. So you just guess this one, you get like 8 points. And if you guess wrong, you just missed a point, but that was fine. So you could just do this one test and narrow it down, and then you could guess, and you would get points. So the hard thing about this is that after a little while, she actually ran out of liquids, and you couldn't do this test unless it was a liquid. So then you would get to the solids, and you could try to melt the solid. And if you melted the solid and it turned into a liquid, then you could add it to the liquid and do the same test and see if the ring came up, and then I could just guess. But if it didn't melt, then I couldn't do the test. I had to do these other tests. And so what Joel and I decided to do was to just do the test as quickly as we possibly could, and do the guess using the ratios, and then get our grade up, and then maybe we could finish that before the solids even came around. So what happened was we did that, and sure enough, we were going way faster than everybody else, and everybody's like, why are you going so fast? Why are you going so fast? Until they realized that we were doing this one test. We were literally just doing one test over and over again, and then guessing, and not caring if we got it wrong, because if we got it right, we got so many points. All the way to the point where in the first couple days, we got all the way up to an A. We got all the points we needed for an A. And so we got to the solids, because the whole class ran out of solids, and people ran out of liquids. People started getting upset because there weren't any liquids anymore, because Joel and I had used them all up. And so we got to the solids, and then the tests were so hard, we did our first solid and it didn't melt, and we were like, well, we already got an A, we can just stop. So we just started going around and, like, talking to other people and helping other people. Well, it became very clear that we had broken the system again. So Ms. Richardson, the teacher, actually said, later on, no longer can people do just this one test. They have to do at least a series of tests to try to guess what the compound is. The reason I talk about this is because rules are how we govern ourselves in a society or in an organization, and rules are really important. And I'm not proud of the fact that I essentially subverted the rules. I wasn't learning. I was just looking at how the rules were set up and figuring out how I could get a good grade without even getting the knowledge necessary to be good at chemistry, which might be why I'm not a scientist now. When you think about the rules that govern classrooms and schools, but also our government and our society, it's really important that you pay attention to how rules shape behavior. And we'll be talking about that this year. Thanks.